Okay, my name is Ron. I'm the cooper around here, and I'm working here for about 15 years now. And the place where I work at the museum, we show the people how the people used to live 100 years ago, and how they used to work. So I'm making barrels. Most of the time, I make barrels for herring, anchovies, that kind of stuff, and also buckets. And all in the traditional way, so all by hand. So I don't use any machines to make. And I'm learning. I have some apprentices, a couple of men that I'm teaching the craft. Yeah, something like that. You want to know more?
Well, I guess about the more about the apprenticeship.
Yeah.
Because there are so few coopers left,
That's right. Yeah.
and the museum is effectively keeping the craft alive in the Netherlands.
Mm-hmm.
So there aren't really any other businesses as coopers hit in the Netherlands.
There are a couple of people who are still working, but most of the time on a fair or something. And my colleague who just retired, he still has a working place where he's selling the barrels from, but most of the time for a garden, a rainwater barrel, that kind of stuff, flower pots, but not used for herring or anchovy because it's not allowed anymore, of course, to keep food in it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And in this area, there is nothing for wine or beer because they didn't make it. Well, beer, of course, but wine is not the area for here.
Mm-hmm.
No.
Mm-hmm. And you learn all of your skill within the museum.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I never thought I would be a cooper. No. But about 9 years ago, I started to. Well, like I said, I was working here 15 years ago, and tried a lot of different stuff around here, and finally came here, and I thought, well, this is it, making something by hand, and don't use any machines. And then, for example, the bucket like that, like this one. And you put water in it, and let's say about a half hour later, it's not leaking anymore without any machines. Then it's really a good job for you. But it's really fun to make, yeah. And that's also the thing that, well, we talked yesterday, of course, and you were saying from what can we do with to make it alive again, because it's hard to do, and I think that's still a thing that's quite difficult because it's too expensive doing it all by hand. But I think for people who are working with wood, it's really a good, how do you say that, way to step up, because you learn how to read the wood, how it handles, how what you can do with it. And working all by hand, you really get connected with the product that you make. So that's a good start for everybody who's working with wood, because you use all the old tools, you can see what it does, especially when you try to see the difference between machines and handwork like that. Yeah. So maybe that's a thing that you can use it as a. I don't know if it's possible to make something in this museum to sell, because that's difficult. Because a day like this, when you have about 2,000 people coming, sometimes, then we're more talking than working, and that's part of our job as well. So to be productive, that's quite difficult, because then we can't explain to people how the people used to work. So that's a difficult part here. So to be more commercial, that's difficult. But to teach, let's say, students who are working with wood, any kind of wood or any way of woodwork that they do, that's I think it's a good for a workshop or something like that. I think that's a good thing. That's possible, because it's the basic of most of the woodwork. It's also coming from the cooper, of course. And it's unbelievable how people invented a barrel or whatever. How can you imagine that there's no clue, there's no nails, there's nothing in it? Only the bands, or sometimes it's only willow, like, well, these, like this, of course, that's holding it together. Sometimes not, but this is it. And it's not falling apart. So it's a long way to come to a barrel like this, of course, and it takes a lot of work. A small one like this was a one-time purpose only barrel for fish, and still a lot of work, because all these are shaved by hand, of course, and bent by fire. And then you have to take the willow around it. And in the earlier days, it took them about 2.5 hours to make a small one like this. That's very quick. For me, when I'm not talking in the wintertime, when I don't have to explain what I'm doing, it takes me about half a day, because I'm not that productive. That's not that I'm lazy, but I don't have to be that productive as the people used to be. So,
And how long would it take when the museum is open and running and kind of lots of people are asking you questions?
That's depending on the day, of course. When I start in the morning with the from beginning till end, then sometimes it took me the complete day, maybe a day and a half. It's really depending on how many people are coming in, and of course it's I'm also allowed to say nothing and only answer the questions that they are asking. But I can imagine that when somebody is coming here and see me working, I try to trade places and I think, okay, what do I want to know? And so I try to explain a lot about the craftsmanship, because there are less and less people who are knowing where it was for, how it was done. And that's part of being working in a museum is also all about. It's not only the work, but it's also make sure that the knowledge about it is not lost as well. And most of the books that we are using are in English or sometimes in French as well. But in Dutch there's only one book, and that's written from Belgium. That's the one that we're using. So, but there's not so much, because it used to be from father till son. And there was no school, well later on, but it was already when it was done by machines. Then there was a school where you can teach a little bit about the principles, but not the old way like we do it. So it's really almost died, and well, we try to bring it up again. But that's a little bit of what you want to do as well. Huh?
Yeah, but we're also interested in your apprentice. And
Yeah.
how you're passing on the skill.
Well, for me that's quite new, because last week my colleague retired. So for me it's really new to learn it to the other guys. And for me it's I'm still learning. That's it. Because of course I know how to make a barrel. That's something of course you learn. But now to explain to somebody else how to make it and use the tricks that I'm using, when I see him struggle with a barrel, and I say, okay, I do it like this. And it's really funny, because I really like to teach somebody else the skills, because when you have to teach somebody, you also think about it yourself. And more that I think about it, it's becoming more and more a part of yourself. And then it's easier to explain. You understand it? Yeah. So, but here we're working now with mostly volunteers, but now I have one apprentice. And the thing is that I think next week is the first time that we're going to work together. So we met already, but he's working most of the time when I'm not working. So my colleague before me, he teaches him a lot, like the basics. And sometimes I give orders on paper, and if he has questions, he gives me a call. That's now, but we're going to try to work more together, like I did today. With Jeroen, because that's very important to be working together and see how, or not only see, but also listen to my stories to the people, because otherwise you get many different stories and not all the same. So that's quite important as well. So at the moment I'm writing a handbook. That's what I'm trying to do now. So I'm collecting many information from all around, so from the internet, but also from the books, and making a story so everybody who's working downstairs is having the same story as I have. That's a little bit what I want, but it's going to take a while, because there's a lot of reading and searching, but that's the thing. I want to make a sort of standard way to work. So not that, let's say when you come here today, you hear the story from me and it's quite long, and tomorrow you come to somebody else and say, I don't know. That's not it. That's also not the way it's supposed to be. It has to be like a standard way, but also room for when somebody is really interested. You can make the story bigger. That's what I do. So sometimes I talk about the time that how long people used to work Sometimes I talk about the purposes of the barrels. Sometimes I talk about the tools. And it's really depending on. And child labor is one thing, of course. When I have a lot of kids, I talk about child labor, especially when they are the age that the kids used to work as a cooper. And then you have the connection, and that's what I'm trying to do all the time. So I'm a little bit reading the people who are coming inside, and I will explain them what I think they want to know, or what I think when I was them, what they want to know. So it's always, sometimes like that. Yeah. But it's really hard. I'm trying to find more information, but that's the difficult thing. And I talked to you yesterday about the tools. It's also hard to get the right tools in Holland. I know that there are more coopers in Belgium, in Germany, in France. So I have to be there, or maybe the UK or whatever. Yeah. And but that's something that I can use the people from the indoor museum for as well, because they have the collection and they have the connections as well. So we want to try to have more connection with the indoor museum as well, because they have a lot of knowledge more. But for let's say the connections to other museums, then I need them. But the special information I really have to find myself, because I know what's interesting and I know the questions from the people, and for them it's okay, it's all knowledge. It's not meant wrong, of course, but sometimes you get a lot of knowledge, and then I have to make sure that what is important for my students and for the people.
And what do you think that you could do to attract more people into the profession?
Well, that's a thing that you set me thinking yesterday, and it's quite hard, because I was thinking that besides this museum, not only this museum, but there's not so much purpose anymore. Only people who are making furniture out of it, and most of the time it's made. Well, the furniture they make by hand most of the time, but still it's cheaper to make them by machines. So the way I'm working is too expensive and taking too long of time to make. So it's hard. I was thinking about it yesterday, and I couldn't find one way to say, okay, maybe let's do this. Like I said, I think it's a good thing to have like a workshop for people who are really interested in working with oak or whatever, and the way people used to work with the old tools. That's a thing. But to make something worthwhile, when people want to buy, for example, they ask, can we buy something, and they want to buy a bucket like this just to be a flower pot. And then you have about €100 flower pot. It's quite expensive. And the other thing is that they drill holes in it so the water can get out, and we do our best to close it up. So it's, yeah. So that's the difficult thing. And I don't know, maybe in a couple of weeks I think, oh well, that's it. But now it is short notice because it's just a day, and it was quite busy for me yesterday. But then it's hard to find an easy solution for how can we bring it back to life. I think the best thing to do is to make sure that all the information there is about the special ways of coopering, because it was not only in this area in the Zuiderzee Museum, it's more about fish, but there were so many different ways. There were for vegetables, there were for fruit, for cabbage, for whatever, and also for nails or for flour. There's so many purposes that they use the barrels for. Later on, the washing machines, the washing tubs. So all these ways of being a cooper are very important, not only this thing that we show here. So there's a lot to do to make sure that it's coming back alive. Maybe talk about it to many people and let people be aware, because most of the time, for example, people know barrels with the metal rings like this, of course, bands like this, but they don't know the willow. This was also an old trade to make the willow, and so are many different kinds of trades connected to each other. And that's good to know as well. This was much cheaper. I don't know if I explained it yesterday. This was cheaper. The willow was cheaper than the metal rings. And also for the barrels for fish, for anchovies. They used it because anchovies, they stored for 7 years. And when you use metal rings, it will rust. And then it collapses. And this will not be, well, it won't rust. It's wood, of course. And it will shrink and expand with the barrel when it's getting wet. Much cheaper in those days. Now it's almost a little bit more expensive than metal lamps. Different times, different money. So.
And if you had the chance to go into a business as a cooper or with another cooper, do you think that you're more beneficial in a museum, or do you think that you could also see yourself outside of a museum?
Well, I couldn't be a cooper outside of the museum without making use of the machine-built barrels as well. So when I do that, I couldn't work this way. Because then when you start as your own cooper, then a lot of people want to have the flower pots, and then on your own you couldn't work that quick and that cheap as somebody else is doing, or let's say a garden center or whatever. They are having rainwater barrels for 50 euros. And for me it takes, well, maybe 450 euros to make one. So you see, that's the difference. So for me, starting or together with somebody else, that's difficult, I think. It's not that I thought about it, of course, but it's not really something I think is the way I like to work. Because the nice thing about working in a museum is that it's not productive. You know, that's the thing. I think it's not selling barrels, but it's selling the complete story. That's it. Complete package. So give good information and tell people about it, and just by Dutch sayings maybe, or that kind of stuff, so people can relate and think, oh yeah, I know where that's from because the cooper over there told it. And by telling it, more people are talking about it. So when you are enthusiastic about something, I think you can make people enthusiastic about it. But I don't know if there's a commercial way to make this from this museum, selling it. I don't think so. Because then we're coming back to being productive. It's not possible here. Not even when you're standing together. Because today I was standing with my apprentice, and he's working behind me. I was explaining. But because he's working, I could hardly explain because he was bang, 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 hammering. So then I have to be in another place being productive and telling my story over here. So that's the thing then. But that's losing the whole purpose of showing people how the craftsmanship used to go. So that's, you understand what I mean? It's a little bit the balance. You have to find a balance between making it interesting and working the traditional way. And it's, of course, normal that because of the times are going faster, everything has to be cheaper, and the quality was not so important. In the early days, you made something to last. And now you make something, so in a couple of years you buy something new. Maybe in a couple of weeks or months. And that's the difference. And I think that's the difference between 100 years ago and now. Because sometimes maybe it's nice to make buckets, because they have to learn to make buckets or whatever. The smaller things that we don't use a lot in this museum, it's possible to sell it in a museum store, or maybe something like that. But that's not, make it more like a special offer. So they couldn't come to us and say, okay, we want 10 of those. That's not possible because we make them all by hand. But when I have about 10 buckets standing over here, well, I have no use for them.
Yep. So
then it's possible for people maybe, because when you have 10, the price is getting less because you have enough of them. So that's maybe a thing to do. But like I said, it's not always, then it's more like a special offer, so it's not a thing that you can easily do. Or in the winter time, then I'm the only cooper here. I have to make a lot of things so I can sell it in 6-7 months. but it's sold earlier than made.
Do you think, or do you know if you're self-sufficient as a Cooper here to the museum in a monetary sense? So are you making and selling?
No, because we sell stuff sometimes, but the money and the time that you put into, I think that's not the same, because sometimes we sell things too cheap to another museum. Okay, you need it, we have it, we can do it, take it away. And but it was never the thing to do. It was never about selling. And I don't know if that's the way I want to go with the place as well, because like I said, it's not a steady way. Sometimes you talk more than you make, like I said before. And I think, especially for the people that I'm learning the trade to, it's all about, you're getting quite insecure when something's not working. You know that they have ordered about 5 of those and it's not working. Then there's a lot of pressure to the apprentices as well. That's what I don't want to do. You know, when they like it or when they make a lot of it, when you have one at home, you don't need another one. Well, maybe 2 and then that's it. So then it's, for them, it's no problem to say, okay, sell it. You know, but it must not be the thing that's the most important thing. I think the most important thing is keeping it like it used to be. So tell the story, make a quality product in the way they used to do it. Better slow and good than fast and bad. You know, that's something, because if I want to be productive, then I work in a factory. That's not what I want. It's really nice to have, well, like I said before, to make it by hand. It's taking time, but the effort is, well, quite good, because you're so happy when you do it, something like that. Very proud of yourself. Especially knowing that not many people are having the skills to do it.
In contrast, we've looked at the Borstel maker here.
Yeah.
And I think there's a different story there.
Of course.
Because when we came with someone last time, they left with 3 brushes.
Yeah.
Because they said this is the best place to get brushes.
That's right. That's right.
So a reflection upon that. Why is that working?
Why is that working over there? Because it's he can make about 40 brushes in a day, even when he's explaining to people, because it's all the same thing. It's not. I'm not telling that my job is more difficult, but it's something that. Well, for example, when I make a stave like this, I have to take, for example, 10 times on this side, 10 times on this side, this side, this side, and when somebody's coming in and say good morning, then. And I have to start all over again. It's not that I'm stupid or something, but it's really work that sometimes you need to keep your head together to do it. Over there, it's the similar way, and finally, when you get the hang of it, because he's putting, I've been a broom maker as well, so I know the job. And so it's more like the same handling that you're doing. For me, of course, when you're making staves, that's the same thing. Only it's depending on if you're making a bucket or whatever, or you're making a washing tub, or it's always, you have to count, you have to look, you have to measure, so there's really a lot of things. So it's taking me a lot more time than for the broom maker. That's it. He can make, let's say, the small ones in 15 minutes, maybe. And the fastest one that I can make is maybe when I don't talk to people, like I said, is maybe half a day. So there's almost 5 hours. If I'm lucky. So that's it. So there's the difference between it. I really want to say, okay, let's do it. I really want to know if it was possible, let's do it. But it's, for now, and especially with the group that I have, I trust the guys, really. And 2 of them are really good already, because they are working much longer than the other 2. But we are not so far yet to be commercial. Definitely not. And like I said, I don't think that's the purpose of the museum. That's especially when you go to the sailmaker and say, okay, let's make a lot of bags. That's not the way. You know, you can use the stitching how they used to do it, but it's not a sailmaker's job to make bags for your telephone or whatever. That's really also, I think it's not lifting up the craft, but it's more breaking it down. And that's the thing, like I said, when I'm gonna make a lot of, whatever, these barrels with, it's fun, but it's got nothing to do with my job. For me, that's how I see it.
So you believe not just in maintaining the craft, but like they were before, furthering the craft?
Well, of course I'm open for changes because, but most of the time they were thinking around here, and that's something I said also to my chef. When there was no herring coming in, they didn't make herring barrels because it was not necessary, and so they make buckets and all that kind of stuff. And I know, of course, you can make a cup to drink out. You can make for a beer can or whatever. But that was more. They did it, of course, but that's quite an easy job, and we did it in when I started 8-9 years ago to be a cooper. There were a couple of guys who were making it from the beechwood or whatever, and people wanted to buy it, but it's not a product that I say, okay, the quality is quite high. So people pay, let's say, 30 to 50 euros for a can to make the beer out. It's not made out of oak. So the beer was not tasting quite good after that, and it breaks in maybe half a year and it's gone. And I think that's not the way you want to be presenting yourself. I think so. I think when you make something, you must be proud of what you make, especially when you made it by yourself and not pushing a button in the machine.
So we know about the buckets and the herring barrels. So where was the beer barrel makers of
more down south, more below, because that's where they made the beer, and in Germany, of course, and that kind of. But over here in this area, of course, they drank beer, and in Amsterdam, of course, you had also the coopers. They made especially for beer barrels. But in the area of the Zuiderzee, it was more about herring. But a little bit more up north, it was more about cabbage. So we have a lot of farmers around here. And you also had the farmers, they worked especially for meat. So that's all kind of stuff in the Betuwe, more for fruit, for making jelly. So there were different areas having different coopers. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Because we've looked a lot into what industries are doing, especially around the industries of the barrel makers. With the herring, it's completely changed. With the cabbages, I'm sure it's changed again. But fortunately, the beer making industry is thriving and growing and looking back towards quality instead of the new techniques. They're looking back towards the old techniques. Mm-hmm. So if this was something which could be applied to your work, would it be something that you would do?
Yeah, why not? But there we go again. I don't know if it's possible. It's something I will give it a try, of course. But I think I really want to try it, I don't say no to anything. But I think it's hard to get good wood. It's more expensive. And then still, when are we going to produce it? Outside of the season then. Then the people, you can't let the people work for 6 months. You have to let them work 12 months. Because otherwise I'm the only one who has to make the product. That's not possible. And then it's easier, there we go again, and circles around again, but then it's easier to make barrels by machines. Sometimes I think, well, maybe I'm now too negative, but that's not it. I'm not negative about your idea. I really like your idea about, okay, let's do something about it so it's going to be alive again. But the fact is that there's a reason, why it's not here anymore. And why they go, for example, to Poland or even to Japan or China. I can buy buckets like this for much cheaper than I can make them from China. It's unbelievable. It's possible, and that's and that's sad. But that's also the real thing.
But for the first time in a long time, we have seen this regression that people are consciously buying.
I know, and I get more questions about it. But do you know what that was where my question was? Because I know that most of the times in the wooden oak beer barrels there was a metal container sometimes. Not only wood but also metal. So I don't know what the rules are now because they are yesterday we talked about it. There are some rules that's not possible to make it. Maybe in your house brewery it's possible, but for commercial use I think it's not possible. It's especially with the herring. When the herring is coming in, it has to be in a plastic bucket, in one like this.
I think our idea was to keep in line with the law.
Yeah, of course.
To have it using a microbrewery. We were talking to one in Amsterdam who would brew it in their big steel vats.
That's it. Yeah.
And then it would be housed within the wooden barrels after, which might give it the taste from the original purpose, the wine or the whiskey, which was maybe the original use of the barrel. But also this idea that in a bar, if you saw the wooden barrel in the bar on the side and you could, ask for a drink out of that barrel, how many people would go, yeah, I'll give that a go. Like,
of course, it's interesting. I think so. Yeah, I think that's a thing to try. Yeah. But then I said, well, people don't notice the difference between a handmade barrel and a machine-made barrel. That's a difficult thing. And when you come to prices, that's it.
Maybe it's something which is only noticed by the brewers. Maybe it's something which only appeals within that circle. But hopefully within this kind of time we are now, there are lots more people taking notice, eating organic, wanting authentic.
Mm-hmm.
So
and I really, I'm also for repurpose barrels, like you said, old wine or whiskey barrels. That's good. That's good to make something, make a beer barrel out of that. Of course, I will give it a try. Why not? And I have them over here, so I can do it. It's a little bit thinner than the ones that are made of, where they're made of originally.
Mm. But if the fermentation isn't happening in the barrel,
then it doesn't matter. Yeah. Then it doesn't matter. But of course, with the yeasting process, well, I think the wine barrel will be okay. And well, you have the connection, of course, with the Cooper from the UK. So he's doing the same thing now.
Yep. And he says that he goes through the different names of the barrel. He says none of them are called a barrel. They're all called.
Only the beer is most of the time different from Holland. In the UK, yeah,
it is.
There we got a thing.
It is.
So maybe there's more pressure in the barrel here than there.
Yeah.
That's a good thing to find out, because otherwise we are making a new idea and it's not working at all.
But say the museum was interested in this idea,
and
they were interested in using you within the idea.
Yeah, that's good.
Then would you, if there was something set up for you to go to the UK,
of course,
and learn?
Tomorrow. I will be there. Yeah, no problem.
Because
of course,
to connect you two.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
Especially, like I said, you need to be. Let's make a platform with all the Coopers that are still here, even in Holland. Doesn't matter. I mean, that's important to keep it alive. You have to talk to so many people because people are getting older. Especially my colleague when he's gone. Well, he's retired now, but he's just gone a week, but I already miss his knowledge, and that's the thing. And of course, I'm learning, but sometimes you are reinventing the wheel. So somebody already found out everything about it, but it was there. And he had a saying. He said, "Well, when you teach a monkey to climb your tree, you lose your tree." So, So he said he kept a lot of knowledge for himself, and I think the last week he said, "Oh yeah, this." So he gave me a lot of things to think about and to find out. But now I say, okay, I learned the trade, but now I'm learning to teach somebody else, and I want to do it good. So you're gonna pick from everywhere you can pick the knowledge, but it's not only reading something on the internet. You have to find another source to make sure that's the right information. Not only, let's say, Wikipedia or something. That's not a good source to find your stuff in, because everybody can type something over there.
And also, how much of this craft is experience over book learning, or?
It's a combination of. I think it's almost 50-50 sometimes. You're learning it by doing it, really getting it into your fingers. That's how that's saying as well. And reading a lot about it, but doing it is the best way. So maybe not 50-50. I think it's more like 80% doing and 20% reading about it. And then make your own story in it and well, what suits best for you.
Good. Could we just end on you saying some of the Dutch phrases relating to the barrel, but saying them in Dutch?
In Dutch.
Because we have
Google,
Dutch students
Google.
and Dutch tutors. They can translate this, so we can put this in translation later.
Yeah, that's
but if we had the authentic, language,
Yeah.
that'd be perfect.
Okay. Ja. Holle vaten klinken het hardst. Do you want the explanation as well? Or no?
Yeah, go for it.
In Dutch or in... No. I think the teachers know.
Yeah,
that's better.
the teachers will know.
Otherwise it's quite... iets wat in duigen valt. Als haringen in een ton. Ergens geen vat op hebben. Jeetje, welke heb ik allemaal nog? Er zijn er zoveel. Kijken wat voor vlees je in de kuip hebt. So that's about 4 or 5. There are so many more. Just when you look at